Remember, there's some pretty important information here in the disclaimer. You might want to give the video a quick pause and read it.
Oh, hey everybody, it's me, Sonic! Sonic the Hedgehog! Just here to remind you that if you haven't already, make sure to hit that like button. And for even more amazing customs, don't forget to subscribe to Wake Angel 2001, because between you and me, they're way past cool.
Hello my friends, this is Wake Angel 2001 coming at you with a very special custom. This one is made for Korey Sonic Fan 22, my ever-reliable 3D model guy, and it is the Black Knight incarnation of King Arthur from Sonic and the Black Knight. Korey actually asked if it would be possible for me to make this thing way back when I made Excalibur Sonic. So I've been working on it little by little over the past several months, and it has finally come to fruition. So let's get into this so you can see this incredibly detailed custom that took me forever. Okay, the base figure was mostly this Damian Wayne Robin figure. You may recognize him with the Kid Flash head because this is what was left over after I made that Gravitude figure from a while ago. That kid's superhero avatar. He had like the Kid Flash body, but since he wore a hood, we used the Damian Wayne head. So I had this figure lying around, and now the Kid Flash head is orphaned because I ended up not using it for this custom. So, of course, Korey was able to provide me with several 3D models to make the figure look a little bit more authentic. First of all, the feet, which I should have accommodated space for Robin's feet to go into it. I mean, I did have to cut the ends of his feet off, but I also had to cut into the feet that I had printed out, and I should have made a little step for them back there. This doesn't look very elegant, but it does preserve the ankle articulation that it had, and, with a little bit of clever sculpting, all this could be covered up. The details of the Black Knight's armor are, they're a little bit too complicated for my 3D printer, and it's not like I can print out a hollow set of armor to put onto a figure. I mean, who's to even tell if the proportions would even sync up right, huh? So yes, there was quite a lot of hand sculpting of armor here, and a part of me really wished that I could have found like a knight figure that's already wearing plate armor. Perhaps it would have made this custom a bit easier, but they don't exactly have a lot of those lying around. I mean, there's the Warcraft figures that they made, but those don't exactly have the right aesthetic for this. And it's not like I'm gonna like order a Goblin Slayer figure art or Figma, or like an expensive collector that looks awesome. I mean, that would just be me desecrating something, like drawing smiley faces on the Mona Lisa. No, thank you. Of course, I'm not covering the entire figure and sculpt. I'm just getting the broad strokes of where the armor is, and then relying on paint to actually capture the effect. This is so that the joints still work, and you'd be able to move and pose. Because if I had perfectly rendered all of that armor, but at the expense of being able to move or pose or touch it, then it wouldn't be a very good action figure now, would it? So as you can see, I already started to paint the figure even before it was completed. That's because this is one of those kinds of figures that's very difficult to dismantle. In fact, the only parts that I could actually take off were the head and the arms. I guess you could say that he's a little bit better off than the Monty Python's Black Knight. He only got to the whole "I've had worse" part instead of the whole "okay, we'll call it a draw." But yeah, that's the only Monty Python reference that I'm going to be making in this video. But I know everybody would have wanted to hear at least one. So once I had the legs painted up, you can see that I took Robin's little tunic part, the fabric that's underneath his belt, and I cut most of it away, but I left some little slits. These slips were for the attachment points of these the skirt armor. Again, these are based off of the 3D models from the game that Korey provided, and it took me some time to figure out the scale, but I printed them out in the proper size, and then used epoxy to attach them to the belt. The end result is that they are there, and because their attachment point is flexible, the Black Knight is still able to move his legs. He can't exactly do the can-can, but he can at least take on a wide-legged stance and or a menacing step forward. So once all the below-the-waist stuff was done, I continued the work above the waist, and basically making the armor look right. So as I was making like the Black Knight's decorative accoutrements, like the teeth that go along his ribs, it kind of gave me this whole image. Look, with the cape temporarily attached, you can see what looks like a furrowed brow, and it kind of gave me this image that like the Black Knight actually isn't a man. He's more like this thing. Like he's some kind of cyclops with like a huge eye in the middle of his torso, and his entire stomach is just a huge gaping maw with sharp teeth lining it. And then the head on top is just like a little decorative thing stuck there, so people think that that's where his head is. Kinda like what happened to that corrupted knight from the first season of Seven Deadly Sins. Do I have any Seven Deadly Sins fans in my audience? Anybody who gets that reference, let other people in the comments know. So, so that you guys aren't all lost. Okay, so, even though it might be a decorative element, he does still need the head, and it is also based off of the 3D model. The 3D model was actually very difficult to print out, as a lot of details on it did not want to come out. Korey had to make a ton of modifications to it to make sure that like that thing that comes down the middle of the face actually printed instead of just ending up as a big hollow hole, and he had to put in extra supports underneath the helmet's fringe because for some reason my printer couldn't recognize it as a shape, and it kept on slumping because it wouldn't put any supports underneath, so he had to actually make the supports part of the model. But yeah, we overcame the challenges and were able to actually make the Black Knight's helm. So this is where an actual piece of a real action figure comes in. I should say a real Sonic figure comes in. Specifically, the forearms and hands of the Lancelot Shadow figure. A while ago, a fan of mine sent me some old broken figures, and one of them was a Lancelot that had unfortunately lost a leg. So, at least this way, the figure has some vigor and vitality, as I can use them for parts for other customs. And I had to cut off the forearm part of Robin's arm so I could stick the Lancelot parts on. And this reminds me, a few weeks ago, YouTube tried to mark another one of my custom toy videos for kids, one of my older ones from way back in the day. And I contested it and made sure that it wasn't, because like, I will always say this. My videos are appropriate for kids to watch. You won't find any foul language or gore or anything. But they're not specifically made for kids, and children should not be imitating what I do. Because if you're not careful, this can happen. Yeah, I had just installed a brand new knife on my X-Acto knife, a brand new blade, and when I was cutting off those forearms, it got away from me and left me with this massive gash. I don't mind telling you guys, this produced a lot of blood, and it took several days to heal. Even now, my finger still kind of is sensitive where this cut was made. So, like, small children, you can go ahead and play with clay and craft paints, that's all well and good, but making custom action figures involves boiling water, toxic substances, and sharp objects. You do not want to be giving this kind of a project to small children. So parents, if your kids are getting into this hobby, just make sure that you're handling the more dangerous parts of it for them. Like, don't let small kids be handling sharp blades. Okay, so a little bit of extra sculpting to make the arm details, like the points on the elbows and that thing up on the forearms. And a little bit of extra sculpting to make the spikes, because, you know, this character is cool and extreme characters have spikes, producing the Black Knight's forearms, complete with hands that stylistically match his design and would be capable of wielding the weapons that he will have later on. Going back, let's take a quick look at the cape. I showed you guys what it looked like when it was sculpted, but here it is painted. I had to cut Robin's cape into 7 strips, and then upon each of those strips, I painted the best approximation of that Celtic swirly pattern that his cape has, which is very, very difficult to do and took me a long time. Paint detailing this intricate is just not something that I'm used to, and like, I have no idea how people can actually do these swirly Celtic patterns, because holy crap, man, I just cannot figure out how these things are supposed to do. It's like drawing knots. I really have a great deal of admiration for anybody who can manage to do this, especially tattoo artists who only get one chance and can't erase their work. So, yeah. And now that we can see his torso painted, I think that this is where I can get into the color scheme, because the Black Knight's armor isn't really black. And it's not really like a bright, shiny metallic either. I mean, he does have some bright highlights of silver and gold, mostly on his helmet and his gloves, but most of his armor is kind of this slick gunmetal color. I was able to replicate the appearance by mixing a little bit of black paint in with the silver to produce like a darker, more gunmetal-y silver. It's still shiny and metallic looking, but it's not so vibrant and, you know, stainless looking. Also, the dirty gold highlights were done with one of the colors that I have in my my Vallejo paint. It's called yellow ochre. Yeah, like ochre is a pretty good color when you want to do like a gold, but not like a brilliance gold. So yeah, that's the detailing of his paintwork. So, like I said, since this figure can't really be dismantled too much, I didn't really see too much harm in remantling him at this point. And we see the Black Knight looking skinny. Yeah, like, he does look pretty cool at this point, but, you know, part of the whole appeal are those gigantic shoulder pads, those huge pauldrons that make him look way more imposing than he actually is. Although Sonic saw right through that kind of crap because, you know, Dr. Eggman had been pulling it off on him for years. So yeah, Korey did send me the models for these things, but they were way too thin for my printer to actually pick up. So I figured the best way to do them would be to actually, like, craft them with craft foam. It's actually cut out of several layers of craft foam, all arranged and held into a shape with an extra strip on the inside. And mounted up on his shoulders, they're so lightweight and relatively flexible that they don't throw the figure off balance, and you don't have to worry about accidentally breaking them. And they also don't get in the way of the arm articulation, so you're perfectly free to get this guy to gesticulate or swing his sword around, he'll be fine. Now we're getting into the parts where things got complicated. Korey wanted this guy to have a couple of accessories, one of which being the scabbard of Excalibur. This is the sheath that Excalibur supposedly went into originally, which grants its bearer immortality. Korey sent me the model from the game, and I was able to print it out for the most part, but there were those ring things on the side of it just didn't work out. He even provided an extra copy of the scabbard with bigger than normal rings, but they still didn't print, so I had to make them myself. My first attempt was to cut the circles out of paper and then use crazy glue to plasticize the paper, but they were brittle and crumbled away. So I ended up having to sculpt the rings on the sides. You'll see that in a bit. But this is where I had to do a little bit of outsourcing, because the Black Knight's crown and his iconic sword, Death Calibur, are just way too complicated for my 3D printer to actually make. They have paper-thin detailing and are very sharp. So they're too sharp for me to hand sculpt, and they're too fine for my 3D printer to do. So I went to Sauce Dragon. He is an Etsy user whose name I have brought up. You may recall when he made Excalibur for my Excalibur Sonic, I asked if he would be capable of rendering the 3D models and with his resin printer and do them any kind of justice. So fortunately, he was able to do it. So I have a Death Caliber and the Arthurian crown that's supposed to go over the helm, all perfectly rendered, looking like they were just plucked straight out of the video game. And isn't that just awesome? Also, in the gray primer that he gave me, doesn't Death Caliber just kind of look like a medieval version of Samehada? If there are any Naruto fans out there, you should know what Samehada is. But yeah, seriously, like I'm pretty sure there was at least one Naruto fan on the Black Knight team that made this sword. Okay, so the helmet was actually relatively easy. It just needed to be painted gold with that little pink gem in the front, and then it is stuck onto the helmet of the Black Knight with just a tiny bit of epoxy in the forehead. And that completed the look of the Black Knight. So here's the Black Knight all standing imposingly with the magical scabbard that keeps him immortal and unable to be killed by even Sonic, unless, he's not holding it for a moment. But, he's just not complete without Death Caliber. And I'm a little bit disappointed in myself because Death Caliber is almost entirely red and orange. The two colors that, don't look good when painted. Oh, this is, it's so disappointing. I wanted them to be so much more vibrant and exciting looking, but, it took me 2 days to paint this sword, and this was the end result. I'm really sad because the thing that Sauce Dragon sent me was so epic. I just feel like this weapon deserved a little bit better than my paint skills, but I even bought myself brand new paintbrushes with softer bristles so I could try and get this to look right, but it's just I don't know. Maybe I'm being too hard on myself because I can see all the details up close, and maybe it actually doesn't look so bad when he's actually holding it. But I just wish that I could have painted this sword a little bit better to make it match that artwork a little more. But he is perfectly capable of holding it. It's actually amazing how perfectly this sword fits into Lancelot's hand, although you have to kind of separate his thumb and fingers and slide it in that way, because if you try to slide the sword in, that diamond-shaped thing at the end of the hilt is too big to go through Lancelot's hand. So this is a sword that you side load, not through load. Yeah, that's the Black Knight in all of his huge, imposing glory, ready to do battle against the bearer of Caliburn, or the true King Arthur, Sonic. But yeah, this project has been a long time coming, and it's great to finally have this albatross off from around my neck. So thank you all for watching, and this is Wake Angel 2001, signing off.